You already know the smell. Chili, hot grease, and cherry slush coming through the drive-up window of a Pup N Taco somewhere in Los Angeles. Over 100 of them, all across Southern California. And the man behind them also gave us Randy's Donuts. Same guy. In 1984, Taco Bell paid $50 million and erased every single one. They didn't want the food. They wanted the corners. The man who picked those corners was named Russell Wendell, and by the time this story is over, he'll have built 2 Los Angeles landmarks and lost them both. Before the tacos, before the corners, Wendell sold donut machines back in the late 1940s. He figured out fast that selling the machine is fine, but selling what comes out of it is where the real money lives. So he built a chain called Big Donut Drive-In. About 10 shops across Southern California, each one with a building-sized donut sitting right on the roof. You could spot it from a block away. The Inglewood one was the showpiece, a 32-foot donut made from rolled steel and concrete, designed by an architect named Henry Goodwin. Sitting on top of a little building near the airport in Inglewood. It looked like a cartoon. It looked like somebody lost a bet. And it worked, because you couldn't drive past it without looking. That was Wendell's whole theory. You don't need a billboard if the building is the billboard. He sold that Inglewood location in 1976, and the new owner renamed it after his kid, Randy. That building is still standing right now. It was an Iron Man 2. It's been on 1,000 postcards, and almost nobody knows the name of the man who actually put it there. Through the late 50s and into the early 60s, Wendell kept trying different food ideas, a concept he called Big Taco. Different menus, different setups. Nothing stuck the way the donuts had. And then, by 1965, he landed on the one that clicked. A little stand in Pasadena selling hot dogs and tacos side by side out of the same window. He called it Pup N Taco. The pup was the hot dog. Wendell designed many of the buildings himself. He picked every corner himself. This was one man's restaurant, copied 100 times. Every Pup N Taco had the same tacos, the same fries, the same orange roof, because the same guy was behind all of them. And it was about to take over half of Los Angeles. If you're not from Southern California, that combination sounds random. Hot dogs and tacos, same window. But LA had Jewish delis and Mexican spots right next to each other on the same boulevards for decades, and the food just bled together. Pup N Taco took that whole scramble and gave it a name. The prices were almost unreal. 15 cents for a taco, 15 cents for a chili dog. You could feed a car full of teenagers for under $2. To put that in context, a Big Mac in 1980 cost about $1.18. That same $1.18 at Pup N Taco got you 4 tacos or 3 chili dogs, and you'd still have change. A teenager with $4 in his pocket could feed himself and 2 friends and have enough left over for gas. Now, pay attention to the next 3 things, because all 3 of them have to be true for this chain to disappear the way it did. First, Wendell kept every single restaurant company owned. No franchises, no partners, no outside money. Just the Wendells and a stack of orange A-frame buildings on corners he picked himself. That meant total control over the food, the quality, everything. It also meant there was nobody else at the table if somebody came along with a big enough check. Second, those corners. Wendell had an eye for them. He picked the right intersection in the right neighborhood at the right time over and over for 20 years. Those corners are the whole story, by the way. Who picked them, what they were worth, and what happened when somebody else wanted them. Third, in 1968, he registered the service mark. Pup N Taco. On paper, officially his. The corners, the buildings, the name, all of it in one family's hands. That is a lot of value. In one basket. And it is a very attractive basket. By January of 1972, there were 50 Pup N Tacos open. The Los Angeles Times ran business briefs every time a new one appeared. Tarzana, North Hollywood, the whole valley. A year later, 62 with the latest on Pacific Coast Highway down along the coast. And they just kept going. The Valley, the South Bay, Orange County, the Inland Empire. Even a handful in Denver and a few out in Albuquerque. Hold on to the Albuquerque ones. They outlast everything else in this story. By the early 1980s, the chain had crossed 100 locations. All company-owned, all sitting on Southern California street corners the Wendells had picked when those neighborhoods were still half empty and the land was still cheap. And underneath every orange roof and every 15-cent sign, a clock was already ticking. Those corners were about to become the most expensive part of the whole operation. And somebody else was watching. That's 20 years, from a Pasadena sidewalk to 100 corners across Southern California. Now I need to take you inside one of these, because what it felt like to be there is the whole reason the rest of this stings. It's a Saturday night around 1980. You're in the parking lot of a Pup N Taco on Ventura Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley. The building is small, orange A-frame roof, a big lit sign, and the biggest thing on it isn't the name. It's the price. 15 cents, in numbers taller than the letters. That was pure Wendell, by the way. He understood, before anybody was teaching marketing classes about it, that the price was the advertisement. You don't need to explain what a taco is. You just need somebody driving past at 40 miles an hour to see the number 15 and think, wait, that can't be right. The menu is painted right on the wall, behind the counter. Tacos, burritos, every kind of hot dog you could think of, a pastrami sandwich with guacamole and chiles, and a thing called the taco on a bun, which was exactly what it sounds like. Taco meat, lettuce, cheese on a hamburger bun. For a lot of regulars, that taco burger was the whole reason they kept coming back. You'd walk up to the window, or pull through the drive-thru if you were brave enough. Those lanes were tiny. Somebody online swears that in 1981 they could barely squeeze a 62 Cadillac convertible around that corner. I believe it. The whole thing took maybe 2 minutes. The food came in a warm paper bag. If you were eating in the car, you'd set it on the seat and everybody would just reach in. No tray, no table, no ceremony. Just a warm bag on the center console, windows down, radio on, and whatever was left of Friday night still ahead of you. The fries were weird, and I mean that with complete affection. They were not cut from a potato. They were extruded from a paste, pushed through a crinkle-shaped die, and dropped straight into the fryer. If you worked there, you knew this. If you ate there, you didn't care. They tasted a way nobody else's fries tasted. I loved them. You had about 4 minutes before they went limp, so you learned to eat fast. And the slushes. The cherry slush, the grape slush. Those two drinks are the single most talked about thing in the entire history of this chain. People talk about that cherry slush the way other people talk about their first car. And honest to God, I can still taste it if I think about it long enough. That specific fake cherry ice that nobody else ever got right. 40 years and nothing has come close. Prices stayed low for a ridiculous amount of time. A deal in 1980, and I've seen the actual coupon, said Pup or Taco, 99 cents buys 4 tacos for under $1. The drinks were RC Cola, by the way. Not Pepsi, not Coke. Arc, that tells you something about how this place ran. The people behind the counter were mostly teenagers pulling their first paycheck. Minimum wage was about $1.35 an hour when some of them started in the mid-1970s. Some of them stayed. One guy who started at store number 67 in Long Beach back in 1973 worked his way up from the fryer to management and eventually ran his own store. Built a whole career under that orange roof. And one day his store wasn't his anymore. But we'll get there. That first job culture was real, by the way. If you worked at a Pup N Taco in the 70s, you remember the ice fights on the late shift and the free food after close, and the regulars who knew your name before you learned theirs. People had nicknames for the place, some of them affectionate, some of them not. Pup N Taco was the cleanest one, and every single person who used it still went there twice a week. Wendell himself would just show up unannounced at random locations to check on the food. No call, no warning. One guy, one car, 100 restaurants. And it got big enough that Johnny Carson was dropping the name in monologues on The Tonight Show. They ran TV commercials, quick 10-second spots with names like Slurp, Rip, and one called Brother Turtle. They had a bumper sticker that said, "Bite the one you love." And the jingle. Ask 10 people what the Pup N Taco jingle sounded like, and you'll get 10 different answers. Somebody remembers it as, "I'm Pup, he's Pup, I'm Taco." Somebody else swears it was, "Pup N Taco, Pup or Taco, 99 cents buys 4. Nobody agrees, and everybody is sure they're right. That's how you know it worked. If Johnny Carson is joking about your taco stand on national television and strangers are putting your slogan on their bumper, you've made it. For a chain that never franchised and never went public, that's as good as it gets. But attention like that draws eyes. And not all of them are friendly. One more thing. Most people don't know. Tina Marie, the R&B singer behind Lovergirl and Square Biz, worked at the Pup N Taco in Mar Vista in the mid-1970s while she was still going to Venice High School. Before the Motown records and the sold-out tours, she was making chili dogs for $1.35 an hour. That one always gets me. That was it. That was the peak. The best this story gets. And what comes next happens a lot faster than the 20 years it took to build. If you're getting something out of this, do me a favor and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one we dig up. Because the part I'm about to tell you is what most people never heard. By the early 1980s, the land underneath those taco stands was worth a fortune. A corner lot in the San Fernando Valley that the Wendells might have picked up cheap in the late 60s was now worth 5 or 10 times what they paid for it. The restaurant sitting on top was making modest money, but the land underneath was now worth more than that restaurant would earn in a decade. That was the trap. They were sitting on a gold mine, but to get to the gold, they'd have to tear down the only thing making them money. And Taco Bell was getting enormous. PepsiCo bought them in 1978, and the Pepsi money turned Taco Bell into a national machine. By the early 80s, Taco Bell had roughly 1,800 locations across the country. Pup N Taco had about 100. That's an aircraft carrier, circling a fishing boat. And the fishing boat was anchored to the best corners in Southern California. The Wendells told the Wall Street Journal they were dealing with inflated property prices and that the company was no longer able to afford expansion. The land was so expensive that opening one new store cost more than that restaurant could ever earn back. 100 buildings on prime corners, no room to grow, and PepsiCo's checkbook sitting on the table. Something had to break. In the fall of 1984, Taco Bell made its move. 989 Pup N Taco locations in California. A reported price of $50 million, roughly $155 million in today's money. The Los Angeles Times ran the story on November 1st, 1984, with one line from Taco Bell that tells you everything. It's their locations that make them so attractive. Let that sit for a second. Not the food, not the recipes, not the name, not 20 years of loyal customers ordering cherry slushes at the window. The locations. $50 million for 99 of the best fast food corners in Southern California. And then, one location at a time, the Pup N Taco signs started coming down. The orange roofs got remodeled or torn off entirely. The menus, the chili dogs, the slushes, the weird fries, all of it gone. If you were a regular, here's what it looked like. You'd pull into the parking lot one week and the sign was different. Different colors, different letters. The building was the same, The corner was the same, but the menu behind the window had changed overnight. Some people drove past and didn't even stop. Some people went in anyway, looked at the Taco Bell menu, and quietly realized the place they'd been coming to for 10 or 15 years was just over. No announcement, no goodbye, no last day. Just a different sign and a menu they didn't recognize. And now all three of those things I told you to watch come together at once. The corners were too valuable. If he had picked worse locations, Taco Bell never shows up. The company-owned model made it possible. Because he never franchised, there were no independent operators to negotiate with. No holdout owner in a strip mall in Anaheim fighting to keep his store open. One family owned every corner. One deal closed every corner. If even 20 of those stores had been franchised, there would have been 20 people who could have said no. Maybe 20 Pup N Tacos, still standing somewhere today, but there weren't. One check, one signature, 100 restaurants gone. The same total control that kept the food honest for 20 years is the same thing that let one phone call end it in an afternoon. And then, the name. When Taco Bell bought those 99 restaurants, the Pup N Taco trademark went with them. Not just the buildings, the identity. Taco Bell now owned the name, and they locked it away. That's how you erase 100 restaurants. But 3 of them slipped through. The Albuquerque stores I told you to hold on to. 3 Pup N Taco locations in Albuquerque, New Mexico were not part of the deal. Another relative on the Wendell side of the family kept them running. But there was a catch, and it's a bitter one. Taco Bell now owned the trademark, so those restaurants could keep serving the same tacos, the same chili dogs, the same cherry slush, but they could not put the name Pup N Taco on the sign. They had to change one letter. Pup N Taco. Same food, different first letter. The regulars in Albuquerque didn't care what the sign said. They knew what it was. Same crinkle fries, same hot dogs, same cherry slush behind the counter. If you were driving Route 66 and you knew where to look, you could pull off Central Avenue and for a couple of dollars eat a meal that had been gone from California since Ronald Reagan's first term. Because the company that erased you now owns the word for what you are. And Pup N Taco wasn't even the only one. The same playbook ran again 4 years later when Del Taco merged with Noggles in 1988. By 1995, every Noggles in the country was gone. Southern California in the 80s was a quiet graveyard of regional fast food. Chains that people genuinely loved, places where half a generation learned to drive and order at the same window. All swept up in the same wave of consolidation money. The big chains didn't have to make a better taco, they just had to write a bigger check. Within a couple of years, most of the old Pup N Taco buildings were Taco Bells. Some got torn down and rebuilt. A few became a Tommy's Burgers or a Wiener Schnitzel restaurant over the decades. One in Orange County ended up as a record store. There is a corner in Santa Ana at Harbor Boulevard and Edinger Avenue where a Taco Bell sits right now. It used to be a Pup N Taco. People in the comments sections still talk about it, and one of them wrote that he used to eat tacos there with his dad, who recently passed. That corner meant something to somebody once. Now it sells chalupas. Those 3 little Pup N Taco restaurants in Albuquerque on the old Route 66 stretch of Central Avenue just quietly kept going. Not for a year. Not for 10 years. For decades. 2 of them were still open in the early 2010s. Somewhere on Central Avenue on a random Tuesday in 2012, you could still walk up to a window and order a cherry slush from a menu that hadn't existed in California for almost 30 years. That's either the most stubborn restaurant in America or the most patient. And I honestly can't decide which. But by around 2013, they were gone too. The building at Central and Edith sat empty, and then Roger Wendell, the founder's great-nephew, drove out from Colorado and photographed surveyors on the lot in the spring of 2014. After that, the building came down. The last trace. The name popped up a few more times. Chevy Chase dropped it as a punchline in the 1985 movie Fletch. A building with that orange roof shows up disguised as Pup N Fries in the 2010 film The Runaways. And a surf band called Lawndale recorded a track called The Days of Pup N Taco on SS Records back in 1986. That one still gets me. At least Noggles got a second life. A fan fought for the abandoned trademark, won it in 2015, and opened a new location in Fountain Valley. Nobody's done the same for Pup N Taco. And here's why. The trademark still belongs to the company that erased it. Even if somebody wanted to bring it back, the name isn't available. The food is gone, the buildings are gone, and the name is locked in a drawer at corporate. What's left is small and stubborn. Vintage t-shirts. A family tribute page Roger Wendell keeps, with old photos, employee manuals, and copies of those TV commercials. There's a small Facebook group and a handful of Reddit threads, and every few years somebody writes an article with a headline like "The Forgotten Fast Food Chain Taco Bell Erased," and the comments fill up with the same stories. The same corners. The same cherry slush. The same regulars, now in their 60s and 70s, still arguing about whether the Fullerton location was better than the one in Westminster, and whether the chili dogs were better than Wiener Schnitzels. The answer, if you ate it both, is yes, and it's not even close. Russell Wendell built two of the most recognizable things in Los Angeles, a giant doughnut and 100 little taco stands. He lost both. And most people driving past Randy's Donuts right now, or pulling into the Taco Bell that used to be a Pup N Taco, have never once heard his name. Turns out, the dirt under 100 little taco stands was worth more than 100 little taco stands. And the corners, the same corners Wendell picked when nobody else wanted them, are what made the whole thing possible and what made the whole thing disappear. Every one of those corners is still out there. Most of them still have a restaurant sitting on top. You just can't order a cherry slush, or a chili dog, or a taco on a bun at any of them anymore. That part's over. But for a while there, before the check cleared and the signs came down, when you could still pull up to that window on a Friday night and smell the chili and the grease and the cherry ice drifting through, it was really something. And if you were there, you already know. I think about it sometimes. Driving around the valley or down through Orange County, you'll see a Taco Bell on a corner that doesn't quite look right. The building's too small, or the lot is shaped weird, or there's something about the way it sits on the intersection that feels like it was designed for a different restaurant. And it was. So, tell me, down in the comments, which corner was yours?